The auction barn smelled of hay and despair, its air thick with the musk of animals and the low hum of restless voices. Dust motes danced in the slanted light, piercing the rafters, catching the glint of Emma Thompson's wide, unyielding eyes. At 10, she stood small among the towering adults, her sneakers scuffing the dirt floor, a coffee tin clutched tight against her chest. Inside it, $237 in crumpled bills and coins. Her life savings rattled faintly, a testament to birthdays unspent and odd jobs endured. Her father's absence, a raw ache since his heart stopped 14 months ago, pulsed in her grip. Robert Thompson's voice, warm and steady, still lingered in her mind. See the spark in them, Emma. That's where the healing starts. In the farthest pen, a German shepherd lay, curled ribs sharp against a dull coat. One ear drooped like a broken flag. Thunder, they called him, a name too grand for the defeated creature whose amber eyes stared through the wire, clouded with surrender. Where others saw a lost cause, Emma saw something else, a flicker faint but stubborn like the last ember in a dying fire. Her breath caught a silent vow forming. The auctioneer's gavel cracked sharp as a bone snapping. Lot 47 male German Shepherd, health issues, failed service training. Start at $100. Silence pressed in heavy as the crowd's disinterest. $75, he tried, voice fraying. No hands rose. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears, louder than the murmurs rippling through the barn. Her hand shot up, trembling but resolute. $50. Her voice cracked, a child's defiance cutting through the haze. Heads turned, eyes narrowing at the girl who dared. The auctioneer squinted, his weathered face creasing. Little girl, this ain't a pet shop. This dog's sick, needs care you can't give. Emma stepped forward, chin high, her father's courage steadying her. I have $237.74, and I know dogs. My dad was Robert Thompson. The name hung in the air, a whisper of respect stirring the crowd. Robert's reputation as a trainer, his gift with broken animals, still held weight in Oakridge. The auctioneer hesitated, scanning for another bid. None came. Going once, twice, sold. The gavel fell, sealing a promise neither Emma nor Thunder could yet understand. She approached the pen, knees brushing the dirt, her fingers reaching through the wire. Thunder's ear twitched, a single amber eye meeting hers. A spark passed between them, fragile as a shared breath binding their fates in the dust-choked light. Emma knelt by the pen, her breath shallow, the barn's heat pressing against her skin. Thunder's gaze held hers, wary, but searching, as if testing the weight of her promise. The crowd's murmurs faded, their skepticism a distant hum beneath the pounding of her heart. She unlatched the gate, her fingers steady despite the tremble in her chest, and whispered, "Come on, boy." Thunder flinched, his body tensing, but he didn't move. Not yet. Emma waited, patient, as her father had taught her, letting silence speak where words failed. A tail twitch faint as a heartbeat signaled the first crack in his guarded surrender. Mrs. Wilson's nephew, a lanky teen from the concession stand, appeared at her side, his brow furrowed. "Your mom's gonna flip, Emma." "You sure about this?" She nodded, not trusting her voice, and handed over the coffee tin. The auctioneer counted the bills, shaking his head. "Girl, this dog's been returned twice. He's trouble." Emma ignored him, her focus on Thunder, whose ear flicked toward her voice. She saw her father in that moment, his hands gentle, his eyes reading an animal's soul. "Trust starts here," he'd said, kneeling beside a trembling stray. She mirrored that, now her small frame a quiet anchor in the chaos. Sarah's truck roared into the fairgrounds an hour later, dust swirling in its wake. She stormed toward Emma, her face a storm of worry and frustration, but froze when she saw Thunder skeletal, trembling, his head resting on Emma's lap. Emma Rose Thompson. Sarah began, voice sharp, but the sight of the dog's frailty softened her. He was going to be put down, Mom. Emma said her words barely above a whisper, eyes fixed on Thunder's shallow breaths. Nobody wanted him. Sarah's shoulders sagged, the echo of Robert's compassion mirrored in her daughter's resolve. She knelt, her hand brushing Emma's hair, and sighed. Your dad's fund. We'll use it. But this won't be easy. The drive home was quiet. Thunder sprawled across the back seat, his warmth grounding Emma. Oak Ridge's fields blurred past, golden under a bruised sky, the weight of her choice settling like dust. She didn't know then that this frail creature would become her salvation, nor that their bond would ripple through their struggling town. But as Thunder's head shifted, his nose brushing her hand, she felt it, a spark, small but fierce, promising healing in the ruins of loss. The Thompson farmhouse creaked under the weight of early dawn, its weathered boards holding memories of better days. Emma sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor, a bowl of boiled chicken untouched by Thunder's side. The German shepherd lay on an old quilt, his ribs a stark map of neglect, his amber eyes dull as fogged glass. Each shallow breath seemed a choice, as if he teetered on the edge of giving up. Emma's fingers hovered over his matted fur, afraid to touch, afraid to break the fragile thread holding him here. Her father's notebook lay open beside her, its pages filled with his slanted script. Patience is their language, but patience felt like failure. When Thunder turned his head from food, his silence louder than her whispered pleas. Sarah watched from the doorway, her diner apron still tied eyes, shadowed from double shifts. The grief that had carved lines into her face since Robert's death deepened as she saw Emma's trembling lip. He's worse today, isn't he? Sarah's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of practical fears, vet bills, their dwindling savings, the emergency fund meant for their future. Emma nodded, her throat tight, unable to meet her mother's gaze. The kitchen smelled of coffee and worry, the air heavy with what neither could say. Thunder might not survive, and Emma's heart might break with him. Outside, Oak Ridge woke slowly, its fields gold under a reluctant sun. The community's struggles mirrored their own shuttered mills. Scarce resources, families like the Wilsons traveling hours for their son's care. Mrs. Wilson arrived by noon, her arms full of supplies, a dog bedbone, broth, a quiet strength. Your daddy never gave up on a tough case, she said, kneeling beside Emma. Her hands, worn from years as a veterinary technician, checked Thunder's pulse with a gentleness that steadied Emma's fraying hope. But when Thunder seized that afternoon, his body, rigid eyes rolling back, Emma's courage faltered. She timed the episode 3 minutes of eternity, her father's calm voice in her mind. Stay steady, let it pass. When it ended, Thunder lay exhausted, a faint whine escaping him. Emma curled beside him, her cheek against the quilt, the scent of damp fur and fear grounding her. I thought I could save you, she whispered, tears falling into the silence. The barn outside Robert's old training space stood empty, a monument to dreams cut short. Doubt crept in cold as the autumn wind, threatening to smother the spark she'd seen in Thunder's eyes that first day. Night settled over the farmhouse, heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Emma lay awake, her bedroom floor cold beneath her, as she watched Thunder's uneven breaths. The quilt beneath him was now a map of their shared vigil, stained with broth he'd refused and her silent tears. Her father's notebook opened to a page on canine trust, glowed faintly under the lamplight. They feel your fear. Show them your strength. But strength felt distant, buried under the weight of Thunder's decline. His seizures came twice more that week, each one carving deeper into Emma's resolve. She recorded every detail in her notebook, her small handwriting shaky, but precise duration. Triggers recovery time. The act was her anchor, a tether to her father's methodical calm, but it couldn't quiet the voice whispering she wasn't enough. Sarah found her asleep beside Thunder one dawn, her hand curled protectively over his bony frame. "Emma, you're exhausting yourself," she said, voice fraying with worry. The kitchen hummed with the kettle's soft boil, a fragile normalcy against the chaos of their new reality. Sarah's nursing textbook lay abandoned on the counter, her own dreams of a better future stalled by bills and grief. The vet called. "We need to discuss options." The word hung between them, sharp as a blade. Emma's eyes snapped up fierce with denial. "No, he's fighting. I can feel it." But her voice cracked, betraying the fear she couldn't name. The community's support grew a quiet tide against their isolation. Mr. Jenkins's son, a veterinary student, examined Thunder, his touch gentle, but his prognosis guarded. Malnutrition's part of it. But these seizures, they're neurological. It's a long road. His words landed like stones, each one sinking Emma deeper into doubt. Yet the neighbors kept coming, casseroles from Mrs. Wilson, a leash, from Ms. Parker's small gestures that wove a net of care around the Thompsons. Still, Emma felt alone in the barn one evening, surrounded by her father's dusty training equipment. The leather scent of his old leads stung her lungs as she sank to the floor, sobbing. "I'm not you, Dad. I can't fix him." Mrs. Wilson found her there, her presence a warm anchor in the dark. "Your father failed plenty before he succeeded," she said, her voice steady as oak. "It's not about fixing Emma. It's about listening." Her words lingered, a faint light in the fog of Emma's despair, hinting at a path forward, if only she could find it. Morning light spilled through the farmhouse windows, pale and fragile, catching the dust motes above Thunder's quilt. Emma sat beside him, her father's notebook splayed across her knees, its pages a lifeline to his wisdom. Thunder's amber eyes, once dull, flickered with faint awareness as she murmured to him, her voice soft as the dawn. The kitchen smelled of broth and hope, though the weight of his frailty lingered. Days of refusal had left him weaker, but last night's seizure, shorter, less violent, felt like a small victory, a crack in the wall of despair. Emma's fingers traced Robert's words. Some dogs bond so deep they only hear their first handler's call. A spark of intuition flared, urging her to listen closer. Mrs. Wilson arrived, her arms laden with supplements and a knowing smile. "You're your father's daughter," she said, setting a stack of Thunder's training records on the table. He'd start with what the dog already knows. Emma pored over the documents, her eyes catching a scribbled note, responsive to original handler commands only. Her heart quickened. With Sarah's help, they compiled a list of service dog commands from standard to obscure, each a potential key to Thunder's locked spirit. The air grew thick with possibility, the farmhouse humming with purpose. For the first time since Robert's death, Emma knelt by Thunder, her breath steady, the bowl of chicken near his nose. "Thunder, take food," she said, clear and firm. Nothing. She tried again, cycling through commands. Mealtime, eat now, each met with silence. Doubt crept in cold as the floor beneath her. But she remembered her father's patience, his belief in the unspoken. "Thunder, nourish," she said. Locking eyes with him, her voice a quiet command. His ear twitched a tremor of recognition. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his head, dragging himself toward the bowl. One piece of chicken disappeared into his mouth, then another. Sarah, watching from the doorway, pressed a hand to her lips, tears brimming. The moment was cinematic, slow, the world narrowing to the dog's trembling effort and Emma's unwavering gaze. Thunder ate 3 pieces before collapsing, exhausted but alive. Emma stayed still, afraid to shatter the fragile bridge they'd built. Outside, the Oak Ridge fields glowed gold, mirroring the warmth spreading through her chest. This was no cure, not yet, but it was a beginning, a spark fanned into flame, proof that Thunder hadn't given up, and neither would she. The farmhouse kitchen pulsed with quiet triumph, the scent of broth mingling with the crisp autumn air, slipping through an open window. Emma's notebook, now titled Thunder's Comeback, lay open, filled with meticulous entries, commands, tested food, consumed seizure patterns. Thunder's small victory, eating on command, had shifted something in her, replacing doubt with a fierce, fragile hope. His amber eyes tracked her now, no longer vacant, but alert, as if he too sensed the turning tide. She moved slowly, her father's lessons guiding her hands, his voice a steady echo. Build trust, one step at a time. Each moment with Thunder felt like a dance, deliberate and tender, their bond knitting together in the silences. Mrs. Wilson visited daily, her veterinary expertise a lifeline. She brought supplements to bolster Thunder's nutrition and taught Emma to read his subtle cues, ear twitches for attention, a tail flick for comfort. He's responding because he trusts you. She set her hands steady as she checked Thunder's pulse. Together they crafted a regimen, small meals, gentle walks, commands to reawaken his training. By week's end, Thunder stood unaided, his legs shaky but defiant, his coat hinting at lost luster. Emma's heart swelled as he took his first steps around the kitchen, a cinematic scene framed by the morning light, his shadow stretching long and proud. Sarah watched from the counter, her nursing textbook forgotten, a soft smile breaking through her fatigue. "You're doing it, Emma," she whispered, her voice thick with pride and relief. The community's support deepened. Mr. Jenkins dropped off a handmade leash. Ms. Parker brought training books, each gesture weaving Oak Ridge tighter around them. Emma felt her father's presence in these acts, his legacy alive in her persistence. One evening she led Thunder to the barn, its dusty air heavy with Robert's memory. She sat among his old equipment, her fingers brushing a worn lead. "We're getting there, Dad," she murmured. Thunder lying beside her, his head resting on her knee, a shared breath, a symbol of trust reborn. Thunder's seizures persisted, but their frequency eased, each episode less a defeat and more a challenge to be managed. Emma's confidence grew, her grief softening into purpose. The spark she'd seen in Thunder's eyes at the auction was no longer a flicker, but a steady glow mirrored in her own. They were healing, step by trembling step, their partnership a quiet rebellion against despair. Spring painted Oak Ridge in tender greens, the fields alive with the hum of renewal. Emma led Thunder on a slow walk around the Thompson property, his black and tan coat catching the sun's warmth, a faint sheen returning to his fur. His steps were stronger now, muscles rebuilding under Emma's careful routines, adapted from her father's notes. Each stride was a quiet triumph, a testament to their shared resilience. Thunder's amber eyes followed her, alert and trusting his tail, giving a single wag a gesture of connection that felt like a heartbeat. Emma's grief, once a heavy fog, had lifted into purpose, her small frame radiating a confidence that belied her 10 years. The farmhouse, once silent with loss, buzzed with new energy, its windows open to the breeze. In the barn, Emma tested Thunder's commands, her voice clear and steady. "Thunder, settle," she said, palm flat. He lowered himself instantly, eyes locked on hers, body still as stone. She switched gestures, and he rose, positioning himself at her left, precise as a soldier. Her heart raced. She'd uncovered over 30 service dog commands in his repertoire, buried beneath his trauma. He's more than they thought, she realized, flipping through Robert's training manual, its pages whispering of seizure-alert dogs. Thunder's past with Northeast Service canines, tied to her father's consulting work, came into focus. He wasn't a failure. He'd been bred for extraordinary sensitivity. His own seizures, a cruel twist of neglect. The community began to see it too. At the 4th of July, Picnic Thunder moved through the crowded town square with uncanny calm, his training vest sewn by Mrs. Wilson, marking him as more than a pet. When Timmy Wilson, overwhelmed by the band's sudden noise, rocked in distress, Thunder acted without command. He positioned himself between the boy and the chaos, a steady shield, his presence easing Timmy's panic. Mrs. Wilson's eyes glistened as she hugged Emma. "That's not just training, girl. That's heart." Word spread, and Emma found herself explaining service dogs to curious neighbors, her voice growing bolder with each question. Emma's vision crystallized. Thunder could serve Oak Ridge, where resources for children like Timmy or Zach Jenkins, who battled epilepsy, were scarce. She adapted his training, focusing on his strengths: seizure alerts, protective positioning, scent retrieval. The barn, dusted off and repurposed, became their training ground, its air thick with possibility. Sarah watched, marveling at her daughter's transformation, the nightmares that once plagued Emma fading, as Thunder slept at her bed's foot, a guardian against grief's shadows. Summer sun bathed the Thompson barn, its weathered beams now alive with purpose. Emma stood in the center, Thunder at her side. His ears pricked as she guided him through obstacle courses crafted from Mr. Jenkins' donated lumber. "Thunder, retrieve," she commanded, pointing to a scented toy. He navigated the maze with precision, his movements fluid, despite the faint tremor that sometimes lingered after seizures. Returning with the toy, he dropped it at her feet, his amber eyes bright with focus. Emma's notebook, thick with training logs, documented each milestone: commands, mastered alerts, honed trust, deepened. Her father's words echoed, "A dog's instinct is your guide," and she followed Thunder's lead, shaping his skills to Oak Ridge's needs. Zach Jenkins' visit changed everything. His mother, Carol, had shared his epilepsy diagnosis, her voice trembling with hope. During their meeting, Thunder pressed against Zach's leg, his posture shifting, an alert gaze, sharp and deliberate. Minutes later, Zach's brief seizure confirmed Thunder's gift. He sensed what humans couldn't. Emma's breath caught her vision expanding. "He's not just my dog," she told Sarah that night, her voice steady with conviction. "He's theirs too." She began scheduling sessions, Thunder working with Zach, Timmy, and others, his presence a bridge to confidence for children marked by difference. The community rallied. Ms. Parker brought behavioral books. The library offered a reading program, each act weaving Thunder into Oak Ridge's heart. Emma's grief, once a raw wound, had softened into a quiet strength. She no longer woke to nightmares. Thunder's warmth at her bedside, a steady anchor. Sarah noticed the change, her own exhaustion easing, as she watched Emma flourish. "Your father would say you're listening to Thunder's soul," she said, her smile warm as the summer dusk. The barn hummed with life, its dusty corners now filled with training gear and children's laughter. Thunder's seizures, though, managed with medication, remained a challenge, but Emma saw them as part of his story, a story of resilience that mirrored her own. At the library, Thunder lay patiently, as shy readers stumbled through words, his calm presence coaxing courage. Zach's seizures grew rarer, his fear fading with Thunder's alerts. Timmy's focus sharpened, his sensory struggles eased by Thunder's gentle guidance. Emma, barely 11, stood taller, her father's legacy alive in her hands. The spark she'd seen in Thunder had ignited a fire not just for them, but for a community learning to see value in what others overlooked. Autumn's chill crept into Oak Ridge, the fields fading to amber under a heavy sky. Emma sensed a shift, subtle but sharp, like the prickle of Thunder's fur before a storm. Dr. James Reynolds arrived unannounced, his polished coat stark against the farmhouse's weathered siding. His smile was warm, but his eyes cold, calculating tracked Thunder's every move. A remarkable animal, he said, extending a card from the National Service Animal Foundation. We'd like to feature him in our program. Emma's hand tightened on Thunder's leash, his body tense at her side, a low whine escaping him. Her father's voice whispered, "Trust your instincts." Something about Reynolds felt wrong, like a shadow cast without light. His visits grew frequent, each offer more lavish funding, a scholarship, a chance to maximize Thunder's potential. Sarah listened, her practical mind weighing their financial strain, but Emma saw Thunder's discomfort. His ears pinned, his tail still. "He's happy here," she insisted, her voice small but firm. Reynolds's charm hardened his tone, edging toward pressure. "Think of the children he could help," he pressed, ignoring Emma's quiet resolve. Late at night, she noticed strange cars lingering on their road, their headlights slicing through the dark. Sheriff Miller, a regular since Thunder helped his nephew, increased patrols, his eyes sharp with concern. "Keep him close, Emma," he warned, his voice low. The barn fire came without warning, a vicious orange glow tearing through the October night. Emma woke to Thunder's frantic barks, her heart lurching as she saw flames licking the century-old wood. "Mom, the barn," she screamed, bolting outside, the cold biting her lungs. Sarah dialed 911, her voice breaking, but Emma couldn't wait. She plunged into the smoke, her pajama shirt pulled over her face, the heat searing her skin. Thunder's kennel gate swung open under her trembling fingers, but he darted deeper toward the tack room, where her father's notebooks lay. "Thunder, no," she choked, following through the thickening haze, her vision blurring. He stood in the tack room, teeth clamped on Robert's training bag, his eyes fierce with purpose. Together they dragged it toward the exit smoke, choking their breaths. A beam crashed, sparks exploding, blocking their path. Thunder pressed against her, guiding her to a narrow gap. Outside, Sarah's screams pierced the roar as neighbors held her back. Emma collapsed on the gravel, Thunder beside her, the bag clutched tight. Paramedics swarmed, oxygen masks hissing, but Thunder's labored breaths haunted her. The barn was gone, and with it a piece of their past, yet Thunder had saved what mattered most. Dawn broke over the smoldering ruins, ash drifting like snow across the Thompson property. Emma lay in the hospital, her hands bandaged, the acrid sting of smoke still clinging to her hair. Her first word through the oxygen mask was, "Thunder," her voice raw with fear. The paramedic's gentle assurance he was alive but critical did little to ease the ache in her chest. Sheriff Miller stood by his face, grim, holding Robert's training bag, its leather singed but intact. Inside the wildlife camera Mrs. Wilson had suggested glowed with damning truth. Footage of Dr. Reynolds revealed as James Renfield directing an accomplice with a gas can toward the barn. Arson cold and calculated to steal thunder for PharmaPet's cruel research. Emma's eyes burned, not from smoke, but betrayal. "Why, Mom?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Sarah, gripping her daughter's hand, had no answer, her face etched with helpless rage. Thunder bred as a perfect responder for an experimental drug was more than a dog to Renfield. He was a key to salvaging a failing career. The revelation pieced together by Sheriff Miller's swift investigation exposed a web of desperation. Renfield's false credentials, PharmaPet's unethical protocols, their stalled epilepsy research hinging on Thunder's unique neurology. The second man, a former Northeast Service Canines employee, confessed implicating Renfield in exchange for leniency. Oak Ridge rallied their driveway, overflowing with neighbors bearing food and tools. Mrs. Wilson organized relief with fierce precision, while Carol Jenkins collected donations to replace lost equipment. But Emma's world narrowed to Thunder. Sedated at the veterinary hospital, his breathing labored a major seizure compounding his injuries. During brief visits, she stroked his ear, whispering, "You saved me, boy." His heroism risking escape to retrieve her father's legacy bound them tighter, yet his fragile state mirrored her own. The community's support couldn't fill the void of his absence, nor erase the trauma of flames and betrayal. As Emma faced an uncertain future, the weight of Renfield's malice pressed heavy, a shadow threatening the light she and Thunder had kindled. Winter's edge softened as spring stirred Oak Ridge, the fields blooming with fragile hope. Emma stood at the hospital's exit, her hands still tender from burns, her heart tethered to Thunder's recovery. Dr. Harrison's call had come like a dawn break. Thunder's respiratory damage was stabilizing his seizures, dormant for days. "He's fighting, Emma," the vet said, his voice warm with cautious optimism. At home, the charred scar where the barn once stood ached like a wound, but the community's embrace held the Thompsons steady. Mrs. Wilson orchestrated aid meals, lumber promises of a new beginning, while Sheriff Miller's investigation sealed Renfield's fate. His arson exposed PharmaPet's cruel research dismantled. True representatives from the National Service Animal Foundation arrived their offer, a stark contrast to Renfield's deceit. Over coffee in the farmhouse kitchen, they outlined a partnership funding to rebuild medical care for Thunder and legal protection to shield him from future threats. "Your model service dogs with challenges helping children is revolutionary," the woman said, her eyes bright with admiration. Emma listened, Thunder's head resting on her knee, his amber eyes calm despite his fragility. The proposal honored her father's legacy, expanding her work without tearing her from Thunder. Her grief, once a heavy cloak, felt lighter, woven now with purpose. Construction began on the Thompson Thunder Training Center, its modern frame rising from the ashes. Emma sketched plans in her notebook, her pencil tracing dreams of accessible spaces and youth programs. Thunder returned home, his steps tentative but proud, his coat gleaming under careful care. At the center's opening, Oak Ridge gathered Zach Timmy Neighbors Media under a hand-carved sign bearing Thunder's silhouette. Emma, in a new blazer from Mrs. Wilson, spoke softly, her voice carrying her father's wisdom. Thunder's challenges didn't stop him. They made him who he is. The crowd's applause mingled with children's laughter. A quilt from Thunder's young clients draped over her shoulders, each square a story of healing. Thunder pressed against her leg, his tail wagging, once a quiet vow renewed. The center buzzed with possibility, its rooms alive with plans to train young handlers, to spread their model beyond Oak Ridge. Emma's path forged through fire and loss glowed with certainty. In saving Thunder, she'd found her calling. In his service, she'd honored Robert's spirit. The spark they'd kindled had become a beacon, proving that value lies not despite imperfection, but because of it. Twilight settled over the Thompson Thunder Training Center, its new walls glowing under the soft hum of celebration. Emma sat in the meditation garden, a quiet haven of young maples and stone benches, Thunder dozing at her feet. His scar, a faint ripple beneath his fur, caught the fading light, a reminder of their shared survival. Her notebook lay open, sketches of a junior handler program, mingling with her father's words. Partnership is purpose. The Foundation's proposal to train other children to spread her model felt like a seed taking root. Sarah joined her, her arm warm around Emma's shoulders. "They think you could lead it," she said, a smile in her voice. "11's young, but you've never been just a kid." Emma traced Thunder's ear, his soft sigh grounding her. The center's sign, Thompson Thunder, stood proud, Robert's legacy etched in wood. Zach's words from the ceremony echoed. "Thunder taught me being different is special." Her work with him, Timmy, and others had reshaped Oak Ridge, proving service could thrive in imperfection. The Foundation's support resources, validation protection, ensured Thunder's safety. His seizures now managed his role secure. As stars pricked the sky, Emma felt her grief transform, not gone, but woven into a tapestry of healing. Thunder's amber eyes met hers, a spark undimmed by trials, promising years of purpose ahead.